He is fearless in that he explores in a valley of nothingness, letting only his perception of what he takes to be true as his guide. I would like to study the mannerisms of this man, and in some respects, model my life after him, without distorting his intentions. But I suppose we know from the past of mankind that this feat is nearly impossible.
Okay, this is called August 5th. I wrote it last Halloween. Okay. It's been years since anything has resembled a sun. There are white specks like the stars on Earth, but no overwhelming presence of power so near to command the day and the night. 64 years as the world reckons I've been flying for Andromeda, the nearest chance we have to find another world like our own. I was 23 when I left, so that plus 64 means I am 87 years old. The life monitoring system says I am 87 years and 43 days old, but I like to do the math myself, even if I be a little off. I believe the water tastes strange or different, but I can't remember how it is supposed to be. I imagine new constellations, new friends and faces to keep me company, my only pastime apart from the computer. At least I have one window, one thing to remind me I'm not lost in a psychological state, out of, disenchanted from, my mind. I'm more of a seed than an explorer, dropped from the mother world, a grain continually falling in the directionless space. I'm a biological process now, not an independent thinker. I won't last much longer, only the respirator keeps me inhaling now. I can focus on my breath and meditate all day long. I'm sure my brain will be smooth and flat when this is all done. Before I lose the texture of my neurology, I will make one last choice, one more strike of evidence for free will. I will turn off the dioxide in my chamber so my eyes will never dry out. As long as I can see, I wouldn't mind being dead. With moments of life, I reposition in the cockpit. I want my hands locked onto the steering device. And when I hit some orbiting rocky sphere, the spores of my gut fauna may yet be viable. I'm not alive, but my hands still clasp like an angry crawdad. The probability of me being found isn't worth the calculation. Infinity has a way of destroying the realm of chance. And when I am found, and the things that wonder what, as hard as I wondered where, will find a man with blue eyes looking straight ahead. The posture induced by rigor mortis won't lie about the discomfort of sitting in even the most comfortable chair forever. I wish I could take one more swim in a cool mountain lake. Maybe a meadowlark would sing near me. Perhaps a leaf would fall in front of me. I could be clean again, a cleanliness that is relatively real and familiar. I could feel the cold water and the pain on my feet from rocks, and I could live once more before I die.
It's fine. Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me? Yes. I've got a loud voice. Necessity is the mother of invention. I woke one fall morning in 1953. I'd slept 9 hours on my stomach and my chest felt sore. Maybe something's bitten me, I thought, yanking off my pajama top. The mirror showed no bite marks, but my nipples looked nearly red and puffy. I tentatively touched one, then the other. Each had what felt like an apple core under them. I'm getting grown-up breasts and I'm only 10. They hurt a little, but it wasn't like falling off my bike or Mary pulling my hair. Still, the situation bore watching, and I examined them daily with a mix of apprehension and excitement. Within a couple of months, the nipples grew bigger and the flesh around them filled out, forming 2 small bumps. They felt irritated as they rubbed against my dress, so I started wearing a petticoat. By December, I definitely needed a bra, but didn't dare approach the subject with Mama. When she asked what I wanted for Christmas, I said, underclothes. What? You're asking for clothes this year? You've never done that, Diane. Guess you're growing up. Yes, I am, I replied, thinking of the new Polaroid Instamatic camera that I wouldn't be asking for. On television, it was touted as capturing a smile when it happens. But I'd have to be content with my old Kodak Brownie box camera. Asking for 2 items would divert attention. Christmas morning, I received books, crafts, and 4 rolls of film. Santa Claus, bless his heart, gave me clothes. 2 dresses, a sweater, 4 pair of panties, and 2 petticoats, but no bra. Mary got 3, which she carelessly tossed aside, focusing on her gold Jansen skirt and sweater set. Going back to school after Christmas break, I decided to take a poll of who was wearing a bra. It was easy to determine because you could see the outline under clothing. I counted girls with bras, 11. Then I counted girls without them, 4 of us. Susan and Marie didn't matter, being flat as pancakes, but Margaret counted. She was braless like me. I got her alone at lunchtime and told her my story. Same here, Diane, and I can't tell my mother either. Well, Mary wears bras, I said. I could steal an old one, but she'd see me in it. I thought on it hard and came up with a solution a few days later. As principal, Daddy always drove our 1949 Ford to and from school. A pillow had been left in the back seat, a remnant from a Salt Lake trip. The next morning, I walked to school with one of Mary's bras tucked between my arithmetic book and a Nancy Drew mystery. Margaret was delighted. We'd store the bra between the pillow and the case. I'd get it in the morning, Margaret in the afternoons. We could make the change at noon in the bathroom. She'd take it off after school and I'd hide it again, simple as that. We traded the bra for months, only missing one day when Daddy took the car to a meeting in Duchesne. Each week it got dirtier, a fact we tried to ignore because neither of us could take it home to launder. By April, the bra was filthy, having changed color from white to gray to spotted to black. Mornings, stiff and scratchy as a board. Afternoons, wet and sticky. Plus it stunk to high heaven, a hybrid of BO and halitosis. Diane, if we smell this, other people do too, Margaret gagged. Let's try washing it in the bathroom after school today, I suggested. Working up a lather with cold water and flaky dispenser soap was a challenge, plus we couldn't collect the water without a sink plug. Finally, Margaret pushed the nozzle non-stop, and I made a small lather. This'll work if I scrub really hard, I said, rubbing and slapping the bra against the sink. Gradually, the black water cleared, leaving the bra a dull whitish gray. We cheered loudly, but then noticed large rips in the flimsy material. I'm afraid this cloth is rotted, I said. Now what? Asked Margaret. I can't hang it on the clothesline without my mother seeing. Can you take it home, Diane? Mama never notices anything, but Mary and I share a bedroom. Not only will she recognize it, she'll beat me up. There's not much danger of her claiming it, Margaret laughed, her body shaking in rhythm. Look at it! We dried it the best we could with paper towels and hung it on a nail by the shower. The next morning we ran to discover it gone. The janitor must have mistaken this for a rag, Margaret. Yeah, she looked at me closely. I'm relieved. Me too, I laughed. I was ready to stop a month ago, but thought you'd be disappointed. Besides, there's only a month of school left. Our family shopped in Salt Lake for school clothes in the fall. Mama said, I think you need a brassiere, Diane. We'll get a couple.
Great, thank you. Just Joseph didn't bring that in, did he? No, I probably did the write-up. It's okay. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Josh McDermott. Welcome back. It's good to see you. So, Phil Boyd, is it two names, or is it my... Phil Boyd is one name. Oh, my partner. Okay. Stodge, and then Tyler Esperlin. Oh, sorry, I missed one.
Yeah, you totally skipped me.
All right, I meant Brittany in the between there. Okay.
Off again.
Should I just give up and run away? Okay. No. So we're gonna go Josh McDermott. I'll tell you why I skipped you, because I was so worried about Phil Boyd, the name. Like I was like going over and over again in my head, and so I just screwed it up. And then Brittany McDonald, who's great and a former student of mine. I really like her stuff. And then so it goes Josh, Brittany, Phil Boyd, Tyler. Okay, we'll go there. Okay, so I'll shut up.
Howdy.
Hi, Josh.
Hey.
So, my girlfriend and I are starting a small publishing press. So these are some early copies of the books we're doing. We're also doing one by Tyler, one by Ruin. But I'm going to read from two little ones of mine. First, these are two poems about Sierra Leone and West Africa. This one's called In Sierra Leone, the Americans Drank Star Beer at the Graceland Bar. In Sierra Leone, the Americans drank Star Beer at the Graceland Bar. In Africa, the Graceland Bar, which was a few white painted tables, and the black children watched the Americans drink the Star Beers, and I walked home through the palm trees down the sand paths where the Americans walked with their Star Beers. In Africa, on the sand paths where two topless women waved to me each day, topless, where I walked by on the sand paths in Africa, I drank Star Beers, and the black children in their torn American clothes were caned in the doorways of their broken houses. And the two young girls I called my sisters in Africa, my sisters, the two young girls who I saw beaten, swollen in their daily work at the broken stalls market of flies, the children in the tattered clothes, hernia belly buttons, and the flies in Africa, where my sisters, white smiles, danced with me by candlelight, the only time at night when they didn't have to work at the market, dirt-covered bread, and wandering through the city one day I saw them in Africa, not far from the Graceland Bar, where the other Americans drank Star Beers. I saw my two young sisters with the buckets of bread and fish on their heads for the sandy path markets, broken stalls. The children in tattered clothes were calling out my name, and calling out my name, the tattered children, asking me to be their friend, to bring them gifts. Their hernia stomachs, tattered clothing, beaten in their doorways, all-day markets. I saw my two young sisters, the evening walking home, burnt garbage, sweating. In Africa, I saw my two young sisters, and I called out to them, my sisters, my family, I love you. This one's called In the Humid Afternoon. In the humid afternoon, I sat under a thatched roof within the training compound, an old school named MAPCO, rented out by the U.S. government, surrounded by barbed wire fence, populated with the shells of UN Army jeeps, the Civil War only 11 years off, the ground filled with glass, metal, bullet casings. I sat there in the humidity and listened as an American man spoke about community development and acronyms, and the other Americans in their chairs beside me dozed off and looked at their watches, surrounded by fences made of brick, barbed wire, and broken glass. Under the thatched roof, bullet casings under our feet, I sat there. I sat there in the humidity, the Civil War 11 years off, for the whole day, as an American spoke in acronyms, an old school named MAPCO, surrounded by barbed wire fence, glass, metal, bullet casings, outside of which the families grew their rice in the ditch bank. The families rode motorcycles of former child soldiers into town, outside of which the children died of unknown things. I sat there in MAPCO. I sat there in MAPCO all day looking at my watch, shells of UN Army jeeps 11 years off in the community development class. The child soldiers were an acronym. The families grew their rice for sustenance. The humid afternoon, again, I sat there in the old school American, I sat there, and the children died of unknown things. When, behind the teacher, a hole in the wall, I noticed a group of young girls waving to me. It was Titi and Christiana and the other young girls on their way back from selling, and they were waving to me. Me, an American, glass, bullet casings, metal through a hole in the wall. They were waving at me in their dirty clothes, their big wide eyes, their big smiles. They were waving at me. And so I made a face, and they laughed. And so they made a face, and I laughed. And the Americans didn't notice, and the teacher didn't notice. In the humid afternoon, through a hole in the wall, big wide eyes, big smiles, barbed wire, bricks, and broken glass, we laughed the Civil War 11 years off. Just one more quick one. This is from a book I'm doing all about Idaho. It's called Jesus Christ Lives in Idaho. He gained a reputation for talking back to police officers, for teaching kids to disobey their parents, for telling old women to lighten up. It got so bad that city council had a meeting just to decide what to do about him. In the end, they got him on trumped up pot charges. I was there, man. I know it was bullshit. Since then, I hear he took off for the mountains. I hear he's living near the snake out there somewhere, growing out his beard, caring for sick pelicans, and plotting his return.
Sorry.
Okay, so I know you guys are all tired of hearing about my bladder, so I want you to know. I went to the bathroom before I came, but then Chad started reading and I was like, oh crap. It's happening again, I'm terrified. But I went and I'm good. Okay, I'm gonna get uncomfortable more than that. That was an icebreaker. My first poem's called The Lizard Man. The first time I met you, and the first time you took me home, I didn't realize. The first tour of your basement with windows, the first introduction to stuffed collections, the first time your head hit my shoulder and I thought, I didn't want this. I didn't know. I was caught up, I was a frenzy in heels, I was trying to kiss you back. The second time I met you, the second time you took me home, I couldn't escape it. You jumped to put your lips on mine, and all I could smell was your lizard, except it was you. The second time you went for my gold, I realized I don't kiss lizards. I might not even like lizards. I certainly didn't like your scaled lips or your reptilian hand crawling between my legs and resting there as if I was your sun lamp. I certainly didn't like the fact that you didn't smell human. The first time I forsook it, but the second time I became your cricket. All right, I have one more. This one's called The Woman. There is an ache in between at the top of my thighs. It is the woman, sprung up without my permission. She wants to be fed, she wants to be loved, she is tired of my hands, knows all of my tricks. I can feed her, but we both know I can't fill her. That takes fingers bigger than mine, fingers neither of us control, and fingers that are hopefully a prelude to what I definitely do not have. The woman craves, and when she craves, she does not let me sleep in peace. She sprains my wrists and cracks my jaw because I try and try and try to take away her ache, but I only make it worse. I try to tell her if she can't get along without a man, what kind of woman is she? I try to tell her that her ache was my ache first and she's being selfish. And I try to tell her that I look as best I can, but the only men who want her right now smell like lizards and bite like maggots. The woman doesn't like to listen. The woman who aches in between at the top of my thighs is beautiful. The woman deserves more than secondhand ads, than going home with strangers, than begging on her knees. The woman is mine, but she does not listen to me. The woman is mine, but she does not listen to me.
Sorry, I didn't realize Phil Boyd would be so difficult.
No, I'm an idiot. It's my fault. Sorry.
This first one's called Things Floating in Dark. Celestial objects are obviously incapable of sentience, or they exist in this universe's greatest agony, forced to bear witness to all the atrocities committed beneath them, too far away to do anything but cry their but cry silent upon us. It's called I Didn't Watch Groundhog Day on Groundhog Day. Chimera, no wonder so ugly, seemingly more prisoner than the regular flesh, blood and bone. Some bitter course, so wouldn't matter, but the mountains are so beautiful. Hurt and hard heart and clear castle collapsible. Mervyn would still be proud, because probably doesn't know the depression's warranted for a dipstick of such noble proportion. Immersion brought beleaguered breathing, or at least they happened simultaneously. Who can detect direct causes these days anyways? It's all goddamn god puke, the only bird special at Universal Restaurant, where deja vu is the only thing on the menu that's even slightly edible. Or I'm just hella disassociated, and or some other convenient DSM diagnosis. So no, this isn't a riddle. I put it as simple as possible. How do you convey to friends when you feel conversations useless posturing, vocalized misperceptions of an illusion no one has any choice but to buy into, all of us howling our meaninglessness? No wonder we're so addicted to justifications, anything to not remember our prisons. Why I was drinking Brass Monkey out the ancient scenic visage glass, tragic because 2 was once 3. Still singing heartbroken about it, pathetic, giving up my secrets. Everyone already knows I'm afraid of the dark and stupid, desperate to fit in, then fang bitter when it won't happen. Inevitable, the impossibility of being human. Why couldn't I have been a bird instead?
Hey everybody.
Hi, Tyler.
It's been a while. I'm glad to be back here. Josh mentioned that I do have a collection of poems coming out very shortly. It's called World War Infinity. I just want to read a couple of poems from that collection. This first one is called The Pastor Ties the Tourniquet. I hope you remember the day we melted wax Jerusalem down to a puddle of stones and sinners, and we pulled a styrofoam Jesus figurine from the wreckage like Cortez's gold. I would brush your hair out of your face, and you would smile and laugh flowers. As we stand naked in a field of lemongrass, you'll blow kisses to me and to the moon. You and me are hurricanes and 3 a.m. phone calls to nowhere phone booths where poets set roses on fire. I'll light a candle to you and set it out to sea. I talked with the new Jesus Christ for years about apocalypse and became John the Baptist, and you're the Magdalene Mary. We'll feed the children whiskey and give them rock and roll and shake our fists at the stars with no idea why. A giant mechanical Icarus will part the Baltic with feathers clenched inside his rusting jaws. The branches bend in false decay, and you, O Lady of constant salvation, take off your clothes. Mary, please absolve my sins, for more than once I've stolen youth from sunsets in quiet, drunk basements, and I beg my forgiveness on my knees at your altar, naked as Adam and twice as ashamed. Oh, Gina, your lovers will dissolve into statuettes, but I'll still be here with sunlight whispers and backseat cigarettes and bundles of sagebrush forever after midnight. Amen. This poem is called Acid Skin. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, because Lord, I am sin and I ache for salvation, and Hail Mary, full of grace, because I spend my Saturdays in whorehouses and my Sundays in churches, and maybe I scaled the wrong tree and I'm eating poison fruit, but something is wrong here, and oh Lord, I'm no saint, no prophet in the lepers, but I'm trying. Then this is my last poem tonight. It's called Terminus. It's this wicked whiskey symmetry and improper geometry followed a savior to hell through high water. I offered him a bottle of hollow and he called me a miracle. But I'm jaded, impatient, and history is vicious misery imagined so perfectly by ostracized dreamers lost in the prophecy. My words come in circles, they flee through the Holocene, back to manic Latin and plastic vernacular. It seems meaningless, screaming through a heliosequence, mute and stupid, blind and brainless, when it's rained for days and it's train wrecks. Our last heroes only echo in carved marble, hard and homeless, and old stone immortal, grown tired of poses. Erupting from ashtrays, plain and archaic, waking and praying for a day to come when fences become irrelevant. And motion is just lack of static. The ocean is potent and restless and never-ending and broken teeth and aimless envy. It's masquerade, it's patriarchy, blaming the artist for holding the mirror to the face of those who bloomed in the ruin. And it hurts to burn pages of poetry, but it's freeing the ache and the yearning to rebirth unearthly soaked in empty space wasteland. A cigarette illuminates the shape of my lungs, painful and hungry and ancient. The organ's melody is yelling heavenly obscenities, martyr and whore and devil may care. I'm destroying the void in a maelstrom of noise, such righteous violence, the silence is justified by the riots. Then the world goes quiet, mortified by the war, existing in the nightmares of street preacher fearmongers. And the crows reach a crescendo, screeching to a metronome of sin and bones and stereos. Time twists the minutes. Its business is finished. Thank you.
Okay, next we will have Marianne, and then Star, the matron of Helicon or something, I don't know.
Thank you,
Clever.
Ross.
And then Caitlin Erickson, so we'll go up that way.
Okay, this is good. So, if you were here last week, I have like a million siblings, and by a million I mean 13. But this is part of my thesis, and I think this starts, and my family's going to the hospital. My mom's had her last child, and I know something's wrong, but my dad's not communicating with me, so I don't know what's wrong. So I'm 21 at this point, so I'm not like a kid or anything. Okay. The crisp October air feels like small icy fingers on my face as I help the younger kids out of the Suburban. We use the emergency room entrance, since it's the only door open this late, and we follow a long corridor to the elevators. We look a mess compared to the sterile white walls and just vacuumed carpet. My hair spills out of its ponytail holder, Devin's camouflage print hoodie clashes with his plaid pajama bottoms, and one of Reagan's pant legs is tucked into a boot, the other pulled over the boot. We tromp down the hall, spanning the width of the corridor, chasing away the silence of nurses floating through the hallways in purple and blue scrubs. Dad leads us down the hall without a word, or a glance backward. When we reach the elevators that will take us to labor and delivery, Dad finally turns to Jen and Randy. "You know why we're here, right?" he asks. I look down at my scuffed white shoes and thread my thumbs through the belt loops of my jeans. Of course I don't know why we're here. I can only guess. But I lift my head and nod. Yeah, it comes out as a whisper. Dad nods back and pushes the call button, his thin lips drawn into the faintest defiance. I count my siblings as they step into the elevator. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. I step on last and hit the button for level 3. A woman in bright pink scrubs opens the double doors to the maternity ward before we pick up the phone to request entrance. "They're just down this hall," she says, smiling over her clipboard. "Just follow me." I expect her to lead us to one of the patient rooms, but she walks past them. The 2-minute walk down the hall takes forever. My heart pounds into my throat, and I have to remind myself to breathe. We enter a spacious room with heavy white curtains, partitioning off smaller areas. The nurse draws back a set of the curtains and beckons for us to step forward. Mom sits in a wheelchair, wearing an ugly purple and white floral hospital gown. Her eyes are red and sunken in against deep purple shadows. She's talking to a nurse who's washing a newborn baby. "I think his hair is kind of red," she says. "Maybe. It's hard to tell in this light," the nurse replies, dipping a washcloth into a metal basin of water. She wrings it out and continues washing the infant, baby Jackson. He lies on a low table, clear tubes inserted into his nostrils. The nurse dresses him in a soft blue sleeper and a striped hat. "Are you ready to take him off?" she asks Mom. Mom nods, and I understand what Dad didn't communicate earlier. Mom will be going home with us, but Jackson won't. I let out a long sigh that I will pay for again and again. The nurse unhooks the oxygen, scoops Jackson off the table, and places him in Mom's arms. She pulls the partition around us and promises to be back in half an hour with Dr. Evans. Jackson isn't supposed to be able to breathe on his own for more than a few minutes, but when the nurse comes back, he's still breathing. "Sometimes they're tough and surprise us," Dr. Evans says. "You can bring him into your room. I think everyone will be more comfortable there." The nurse pushes Mom down the hall we came through, and we all follow single file, heads bowed. My siblings have observed this perfect formation only once before, following a long blue box through the halls of our church building. The occasion may be different, but the feeling is the same. The hospital room would be silent but for Jackson. Dr. Evans says that Jackson feels no pain, but I don't believe him. No one sounds like Jackson and doesn't feel pain. His breaths are long and ragged, as if he is breathing through a straw, and his chest moves visibly with the effort. He's a tiny thing, but his breathing fills the room clear to the corners, until there is nothing but his breathing. My siblings and I sit on the semicircle of folding chairs the nurses brought in after helping Mom to bed. Mom sits upright in her hospital bed, smoothing her fingers across Jackson's forehead as Dad holds him in the chair next to the bed. I think everyone should get a chance to hold him, she says. Marianne, you need to hold him first. Dad stands up, walking across the room towards me. I automatically hold out my arms and take Jackson, even though I'm not sure I want to hold him. His breathing grows louder now that he's in my arms, and I find myself breathing with him. His body trembles beneath my hands like the orphan kitten I tried to save when I was 13. I found him in the neighbor's milking barn, mewing and burrowing into straw. His ribs showed through tufts of gray fur, his eyes not yet open. I took him home in the pocket of my hoodie and fed him milk replacement from a bottle as big as he was. At night, he cried more loudly than a creature of his size and strength should be able. I moved him from the heating pad and placed him on my chest above my heart, covering him with my hand. He quieted, but shivered through the night. Afraid I would crush him in my sleep, I stayed awake most of the night. In the morning, he wouldn't eat. His mouth opened and closed, and his throat strained as if he were crying, but no sound came out. His breath shuddered through his body, and I held him in the crook of my arm and whispered that everything would be all right. I tried not to let my tears wet his fur. Within minutes, his breath slowed and stopped. I can't sit here and wait for this rattling breath, Jackson's breath, to stop. I hand him off to Katie and slip into the hall and text my boss that I will not make my 4 a.m. custodial shift. When I look up from the screen, my grandparents, Dad's parents, are walking down the hall. Grandma dabs at her eyes and nose with a white cloth handkerchief edged in blue lace. She's the only person I know who still uses one. She squeezes my arm when she gets to me. Are we too late, Grandpa asks. I don't think so, I say. They're still in the room. I'm going to look for a drinking fountain. I take my time finding the fountain, and when I do, I press the cold aluminum button and watch the water arc from the spout to the drain. Listen to the flowing sound of running water. I used to do this as a child, but then a young boy with sun-bleached hair and sticky fingers would stand at the fountain side, his mouth open brown to catch the stream of water. My lips twitch into a faint smile that fades before it starts. That little boy is waiting in the hospital room with my family.
That was beautiful, Marianne, as usual. She's writing a memoir for her thesis. That's what that's from. So, Chad, those were 3 of my favorites, but as I think back about it, every damn one of them is one of my favorites. So, great reading. And thanks, Russ, for being MC. Hasn't tonight been great with all the big variety of readings? Josh, it's so great to have you here. And how much are those books?
They're going to probably be $12. We're still working on getting some inventory.
Okay, so we can't really buy one tonight? Okay, but you can ask me, everyone. I live in the Writing Center, Ray West 104, and so if you want one of those books, let me know, and I will get that order to Josh, and we'll fix you up with one of those books, okay? Good stuff, everybody. So I'll just read 3 short poems. These are poems from December. Young. This morning the amaryllis opens, orange veins like sunset beams, intense at the core, widening out on the edges of pink-tinged petals. Friendship proves itself once again in the spread of a blossom. One friend's dying, one revived. Young friends bolster and remind us we were once exuberantly sensual, sensually reckless, filled with ourselves, Now we fill ourselves with their hope for a better future. Not one ruined by sold-out hippies and religion junkies, greedmongers and world fuckers, the power, money, glory of older generations, only a few of whom are in charge of us all. We defer to youth, throw a saddle over their hopeless backs, and ride into our own sunset. God, that was kind of depressing. I have two poems about amaryllis, and I guess I forgot that, well, one of them was kind of depressing, and the other one is in this shape, so you might have to guess what that is. But I'll read bucket in between. Bucket. Don't Mondays come around fast? And don't the weeks just roll on by like barrels of bad chemicals, make you want to kick them, but not too hard? Months also. I just turned the calendar page to November and changed the vacuum bag, and here it is December again. Whole years fall into line like railroad tracks over the horizon. It won't take long for us to be gone, our kids taking up the mark of trouble and finding their own remedies, as if they already knew how and were just waiting for us to kick the bucket. So far, we've only stubbed our toe on it. The bucket is galvanized, made up of strong and weak components, prone to rust and dense, but full of apples, full of water, full of all we put into it and then some. No need to empty it. Someone else can lift it for us if we lose too much muscle. We'll lose too much. Someone should come by on a Monday, first of the month. Help us lift it. And I wanted to thank Brittany for those wonderful poems. Wasn't this like a night of love poems, all of them? Love and angst and misery, and all the bleeding, like Chad said. I just wanted to get out my X-Acto knife and go to work. This one's called Amaryllis. Jumps out of the soil, thick and supple as a tumescent penis. By the way, I wanted to mention, since Diane was talking about breasts, this goes right along, right? No blossom yet, just the spearhead shape at the top, a fat curve for easy insertion if you have a matching slot. But soon, the separation into buds occurs and the shaft begins to lean ever so slightly toward the light. You turn and turn the pot to keep the stalk as straight as upright gets and wait for the burst into flowers, a beauty not to be fathomed before it happens, not even to be guessed.
So Star, I'm pretty sure you just made me like blush horrifically. So. I'm super red. That's why. I wasn't expecting that. Okay. I'm taking a poetry class, so I'm going to read some poetry, and it's actually kind of depressing. So hopefully you'll start laughing because that would just be appropriate. Okay. Album. This is also a prose poem. Okay, album. Last night, I clicked through pictures of friend Snap for her introduction to photography class, stopping at the one where Cameron squeezes my shoulder and kisses my cheek, his face almost in profile, his hair shielding his ear. Our faces are young, thin, with blurred eyes, my hair swept into a 3-day ponytail, bra straps peeking from a black camisole. We're sloppy, disheveled. I remember we woke to the knock on the door and threw on clothes that sat heaped on the floor. But my eyes slink into slits and my smile splits my face. It's the picture I always meant to frame. When he left, I listened to the sing-song of his voicemail over and over, trying to transcribe his tone to a place I wouldn't forget. Of course it didn't work. It faded like stars overwhelmed by city lights. His face went too, and the feel of his hair brushing against my shoulder, and his hand resting over mine on the gear shift as we drove the 250 miles through windy mountain passes and stretches of cow pasture that marked the way from school to home. The girl in the picture has faded too. Her face is fuller now. She no longer poses for pre-breakfast portraits and thin camisoles and muted hair. She's never smiled so wide since. Okay, and this next poem is on a completely different vein. It's from the point of view of Eve. Day. Eve. I admit, I took the fruit, held it heavy in my hand, felt the skin firm and smooth under my fingertips, and bit its flesh, juice dewing on my lips, dribbling down my neck, sticky sugar trail gleaming. I ask you to lick it off, and you do, gripping my wrists, tongue rough against my neck. You make me drop the fruit into tall grass, my bite a white crescent in pluming red. Don't worry, I'll take the blame. I fell first, after all. And then the last one I have is called Thaw. We sit on knotted benches in the steam-soaked rental hut of a small-town skating rink, breath-puffing steam as we lace worn skates to our feet. College students in faded hoodies and kids in puffed-up parkas surround us, fill the air with chatter and condensed breath. Outside, the air, dry, cold, cracking, pulls bodies close. Our skates glide over ice, lacerated with cuts and curls of the blades before ours, powdered snow scattering in the breeze. You coax me along, your voice smooth to counteract the panic notes of mine. Just look a few feet ahead, you say. Look where you want to end up. I wobble toward the goal, an evergreen shaded black under streetlights. I fear the snap of fractures and the stretch of sprains that come with the inevitable fall. I fear dragging you onto the ragged ice with me. But you skate next to me, matching my erratic glides, our hands laced, fingers frozen. At home, you drip soft wax onto my back as I lay spread across my sheets like Venus of Urbino. It melts ice in my muscles, warmth spreading like steam. You aim wax at my spine. Heat blooms like forget-me-nots. When we sleep, twisted in check sheets, I lay on your chest and listen to your heartbeat pulsing like purrs against your ribs. My palm resting on your stomach, thaws. Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to have time for alternates tonight, because we have two left. Yeah, right? Yeah, okay. So the last are going to be Jeremy and Scott. So, okay.
Woo!
Matthias stared across the council chamber. The governor stared back from the great stone chair at the other end. What do you want now, Piedmon? The governor sneered. I've come for payment, Matthias answered. Payment for what? The governor coughed into his damp sleeve. The agreement was that I would be paid in full when the rats were gone. The agreement was that you would get rid of the rats. You played a flute. It's a pipe, actually, and the rats are gone. The governor turned to the councilmen sitting across them, around him in their wooden chairs. There have been no sightings since yesterday, the Nereid said. It would seem the rats have left. And the cause, the governor demanded? Perhaps a shift in the climate, said another councilman, migrating predators, or a disease, added the third. The governor shifted in his seat as he eyed the third man. Then it has nothing to do with this man and his pipe. Our sciences give no indication that music would have any effect on the rodent population, the chief councilman said. Well, there you are, the governor said, waving a hand in Matthias' direction. Still, let it not be said that the men of Hamlet are unfair in their dealings. Council, pay the piper. The chief councilman tossed a single coin across the room. It clattered on the stone at Matthias' feet. This was not the agreement, Matthias said. The agreement was for you to get rid of the rats, the governor said, not to lay about amusing yourself until they went away. There must be payment, Matthias said, or there will be consequences. You have no power to threaten here, Piedmon, and you are no longer welcome in Hamlet. I will waste no more time with you. The councilman stood. Matthias turned, leaving the coin on the floor. I think they had left the chamber. An hour's walk outside of town brought Matthias to a clearing at the foot of the ancient mountain. Fireflies were beginning to emerge among the trees. A ring of stones rested in the middle of the clearing. The stones were weathered and cracked, and a few were missing, but wildflowers and toadstools had filled in the gaps. Matthias placed his pipe to his lips and blew a solemn tune as he entered the circle. The mountain vanished, and in its place stood a great stone hall, grown over with clinging lines. Matthias lowered his pipe. Oberon stood there between the stone columns, glistening hair flowing back over his shoulders. You have arrived, the sill said. Empty-handed, I'm afraid, Matthias replied. You bring no payment? Cold light burned behind Oberon's eyes. The governor refused. He seemed not to believe the magic had worked. The rodents drowned themselves in the sea, taking their pestilence with them. He can see that for himself. Unfortunately, sight does not always produce belief among mankind. And it is equally unfortunate for mankind that a lack of belief does not satisfy a contract. A boon was granted, payment must be made. It is the law you agreed to when you accepted our instrument. I know your purpose, I respect the laws. The hall filled with whisper carried from the unseen realm beyond. Auburn looked away as Matthias listened. Then the light in his eyes softened. Yes, Piper, he said, turning back, you have always respected the magics. Our grievances with the people of Hamlin. We shall settle the debt ourselves. Matthias shifted where he stood. You have more to say, Auberon asked, raising a silver eyebrow. Begging your pardon, your grace, but there are many people in Hamlin. I don't think they should all be punished for the actions of the governor. The governor is empowered by the people, Auberon said. Regardless, we do not deal in punishments, only payments. When the sun is high tomorrow, we will exact payment from Hamlin. There are children in the town. They have suffered much already. We have heard your petition, Piper. The laws must be answered. Auberon faded, and the mountain reappeared before Matthias. He left the stone ring and wandered back down the foothills. Raising his pipe once more, he played a pensive tune as he looked for a tree to spend the night under. Sleep eluded Matthias. As the sun came up, he wandered the dew trails outside the town. Cresting a low hill, he found a dark-haired girl sitting among the tall grass. A bouquet clutched in her small hands. She hummed softly to herself. Good morning, little one, Matthias said, strolling to her side. You are young to be out on your own. I always gather the morning blossoms, the girl said. Mother says they help with the smells. I'm sure your mother will be pleased, Matthias said, but she will worry if you are gone long. I know, I just needed to rest. The girl pulled a short crutch from among the grasses and pushed herself up to the side of the hill. Tucking the crutch under her arm, she shambled toward the town. You have a kind heart, Matthias said, though she had moved too far for him to hear him. The girl's humming resumed, keeping time with her wobbling gait. Matthias raised his pipe and mimicked the girl's tune. She stopped and listened for a few measures before continuing on. Then Matthias' tune shifted. He thought of the other children in Hamlin, who were probably waking now. He thought of those who had shivered in their beds while the rats plagued the streets. He thought of those who had watched their mothers and fathers cough out their last breaths. He thought of those who still cowered in the shadows, hungry eyes pleading with all who passed them. His pipe sang somber and dark, then paused as the girl reached the edge of town. It would be better if you were not in Hamlin today. Matthias blew through the pipe once more, and a new tune flowed out of it, a tune that rolled and bounced along the breeze. The girl stopped to listen. A smile slowly lit her face. A minute later, a boy wandered out of the town and stopped next to her. As the girl's smile spread to his face, another boy joined them. The flowers dropped from the girl's hand as she returned her crutch and began ambling back toward Matthias. The boys followed and quickly overtook her. More children emerged from the town, forming a small crowd. Matthias turned and walked back into the hills as he continued his tune, filling each note with laughter his heart didn't feel. He let his feet wander, heading nowhere in particular, just away. The children thronged around him, laughing as they followed. The tree line broke, and the mountain rose before them. Matthias paused, staring briefly at the stone circle ahead of him, then turned back. Matthias? The tune caught Matthias' pipe. Auberon stood in the circle. We heard you playing, Auberon said. The children hung at the edge of the clearing as Matthias lowered his pipe. I use the magics, I know, he said. I will make their payment. Yes, Auberon said, this will suffice. Matthias furrowed his brow. What will suffice? There are many ways these children can serve us, and we will watch over them, and once debt is paid. That's not, Matthias began, but Auberon looked past him. Come, children, the Sill said, raising his arms and taking a step backward. The tune Matthias had played surged from the mountain, carried by unseen voices. Smiles returned to the children's faces, and they ran forward, vanishing one by one to the circle at Auberon's feet. When they were gone, Auberon looked back at Matthias, lowering his arms. Matthias stared back as the song continued to ring through the air around him. Fine, Matthias said. You have your payment. Leave Hamlin in peace. There are more, Auberon said. What? Auberon nodded toward the trees. Matthias turned to see the dark-haired girl still struggling toward them, her crutch striding and snagging among the rocks and foliage. Behind her, two boys crouched and clung to each other. One of them stared at Auberon with wide eyes. The other looked at nothing, his ear angled toward the mountain instead. Their infirmities slowed their pace, Auberon said. Leave them, Matthias replied. We will mend them, Auberon said. They will see and hear and walk. And there will be 3 more broken hearts in Hamlin. Your payment is satisfied. Leave these. Auberon's deep eyes stared into Matthias' heart. Very well, the Sill said. He stepped into the ring of stones and was gone. The song died on the winds. Matthias turned again. The dark-haired girl crossed the clearing to his side. Please, she said. I want to go too. Matthias looked into her eyes. I don't know if I have saved you or condemned you, little one, he said. But for now your place is here. Take the others, return home. Then he turned and ran into the trees, away from the mountain, away from Hamlin.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Yeah, that's good. This is a few parts from a song that I am writing called True Progression of Momentum. Positive balance, you're lost without it, aka forever drowning. If you decide to be confused but you represent that loudly, all of that stems from simply doubting. But that comes from what you do not know. If you want to change, plant the seed, let things grow. It doesn't matter good or bad for you, can't control it like an avalanche down the hill without a purpose. A medium, a force, unsure, without skill because its potential that they want, they think is not real. You can get to the same place, different speeds, but it's not a race, and I promise you, who would actually hold your face? Your skull, it's not about your name, it's what you choose to use your brain for, and your skull is worthless anyway. Stuck in a rut for days and days, not even sure which way to walk, and what way. The lazy days turn gray and then remain purple till they turn black, and then once you go black, you can't go back. Sorry, that was not. That was an accident in reading the song, I'm sorry. But once you turn black, you cannot go back, and what can you count the money to after that? To be honest, it makes me sad sometimes when I see people and they don't understand why they can't breed happiness, mixing words with mistresses and mysteries, causing misery, not knowing why they bleed because they feel that by inconsistencies. Just a little bee in a hive that can't understand why they can't dance because they can't express their mind to the queen, but they just lost their chance. Too late to realize that they control their mind, but they don't have the direction. They're just sitting losing their mind. And then here is the chorus to that song. So easily breakable, not mendable and uncomprehendable. But it seems those who lost it have grown something so toxic because all they do is try to knock it. Simply to throw it on top of it all, the earth's made its claims and you're driving it to the fall. Do not understand it at all. I had hope when I was growing up fast, but then I began to crawl and realized that the stall is something we do not control at all. You see kingdoms like Rome and you want that to be your home, but you don't even know your own. Gold, something so bright and blinding that can be created from lightning, but only inside the mind does it seem, I don't know if I lost my place, but basically, if you don't understand where gold came from, it won't mean anything. Too bad I still have mine, so sad you can't expand. I'm just simply glad because you're a man and that's where you stand. A man has the key in his hands to help the goddess understand the purpose for fighting for the land. Now, when you got the idea misunderstood, the gangster blood bullshit without real purpose to try to explain your clique, it's so sick because